What is going on YouTube? Gabmus here and welcome to the 8th episode of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Hope everyone's doing alright. So let's jump right on to the first news of the week. There's a new Linux game coming that I wanted to mention. It's called Battle Droid. So this game is basically an MMO, but it's not your typical MMO. So it's a massively multiplayer strategy game. And it's the map it's based on, it's the entirety of planet Earth, which is pretty cool. And it's basically divided in this giant hex grid, and where each slot has like a particular in-game resource to that you can have. And once you start the game, you drop into a faction of other players. And the nice thing is that from the first moment, you actually start fighting against other players. As far as I can tell, there's no tutorial, or maybe there is maybe a tutorial, but there's no like single player and no like obvious progression to higher levels or something. It's just like a big game of Risk, where you just get in the game and you have to start either defending your territories or conquer other factions' territories. The concept, the whole idea behind it, actually sounds pretty cool, and I just wanted to mention it. And most importantly, it's going to come with Linux support from day one, so that's awesome. And the game is also going to be free to play, and they do have planned some paid options, some paid content, but for the most part, it's gonna be, at least as far as we can tell, it's not out yet, but it should be decently balanced, so that it's not too like so that it's not basically pay to win, which is pretty good. And actually, pay to win ruins most free online games out there. So I'm glad it's not pay to win. So I just wanted to drop this this game pick here, just because I wanted you to check it out. Again, it's called Battle Droid. It's an MMO strategy game. If you want to check it out, you can find it on Steam. Moving on to the next news. The lead UbiPorts developer Marius Grapesgard, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, dropped a video on YouTube showing the PinePhone running Ubuntu Touch. And if you go ahead and look for the video, it's actually a very nice. It looks pretty good. I mean, it doesn't look like half-baked or something. Actually, let me just drop the link in the chat right here. So it doesn't look like it's an half-baked thing. It actually looks seems to work pretty well. And also considering the fact that the PinePhone doesn't have like the best hardware, it still manages to like it looks like a pretty good experience, a pretty responsive UI, and all the good stuff we know from Ubuntu Touch. The project's been going on for a while now, and it's understandable that it's on a more high level of polish, particularly compared to something like what Purism is doing, or with like the FOSS shell, or KDE's guys are doing with Plasma Mobile. Of course, Ubuntu Touch is a little bit more polished as of right now, but it's still pretty impressive to see this kind of progress on a Linux phone. And speaking of Linux phones, I just wanted to touch on the whole Ubuntu Touch UbiPorts idea. It's been a while since I've talked about this, and I don't know. I have some doubts regarding Ubuntu Touch. First of all, Ubuntu Touch apps are not really made to work outside of Unity 8, outside of the whole Ubuntu Touch ecosystem. And speaking of ecosystem, the whole ecosystem around Ubuntu Touch is pretty much unique, starting from the shell, which is Unity 8, down to the custom Qt based toolkit that they're using. It just that doesn't feel like they're working with the community. Of course, it's a community project now, so of course they're the community. But what I mean is that it doesn't feel like it just feels like they're isolated from the rest of the Linux on phones effort, and they're just doing their own thing, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's still great to see this project go forward, also considering the fact that it's still one possibility that we have to get Linux on phones. But I'd like to see more effort from the UbiPorts people towards going more upstream. Something like seeing the UbiPorts open store working on something like Postmarket OS or some Plasma Mobile implementation, or even the Purism Librem 5. I'm pretty sure if they want that to happen, they can pretty much do it. And Marco Gazzi joins the live stream. Thank you for the AFL trolling. Appreciate it. Anyway, what I was saying, yeah, I would like to see more interaction with the upstream community from the UbiPorts people, and to some degree they are interacting with the upstream projects. Marius recently announced that they managed to get Unity 8 working on Wayland using a more recent version of Mir. And this is all pretty awesome, also considering that this has been a long time coming. And this also means that they can use upstream Mesa without any Mir specific patches for the graphics drivers, and that probably Unity 8 will be in a way easier to run on other Linux distros, which is a step forward. I don't know how well Unity 8 apps interact or integrate with another shell that is not Unity 8, but still, it's progress. I hope they keep going forward and they keep like expanding the whole project and not just limiting it to its own thing. I would like to be able to run my GTK apps or some Kirigami apps on Ubuntu Touch, as well as I'd like to run Ubuntu Touch apps on a PinePhone running Postmarket OS with, I don't know, Sway or Plasma Mobile or something like that. I just like it's one of the things with Linux, really. It's interoperable with between distributions, so there's not like, it doesn't happen that you have a package that's made for one distribution, it doesn't work on other distributions, except some very rare exceptions like DaVinci Resolve, but that's a whole other story. For the most part, even with if we want to make an example, Steam initially released for Ubuntu, but of course the whole Linux community was able to use Steam right from the beginning, on Arch, on Fedora, on anything else, any other distro that's not even based on Debian. And that's the kind of thing I'm looking for in a Linux phone, being able to use whatever app I want, as long as, of course, the architecture is compatible and it's written for Linux. But anyway, again, I hope the Ubuntu Touch project gets closer to upstream. Just all I wanted to say in a nutshell. Moving on to the next news, Proton 5.0 GE is out. We had lots of fixes and updates. So Proton GE is an unofficial build of Proton maintained by the developer that goes by the name of Glorious Agro. You can find the latest release of Proton GE in the link that I'm dropping right now in the chat. And the thing about Proton GE is that it's a little bit more up to date compared to like standard Proton that Valve ships with Steam, and being more recent, it comes it's built on top of a newer version of Wine, as well as newer version of all the libraries, including the XVK, the 9VK, VK, D3D, and F Act, F Audio, and all that kind of the nice kind of stuff. It's all built into Proton GE, and if you want to try like some of your games, some of your Windows games that are not running or are running like slower on your current version of Proton, and you want to see if you can get some more performance, or if you can get a game to actually work, I suggest you go out there and try Proton GE 5.0. It's based again on a new release of Wine. Should be pretty much better. So I left the link to the release in the chat if you want to check it out, and it comes with all the change log that honestly it's an I won't go over the release notes because they're pretty extensive, but if you're interested, try it out. It's pretty easy to install, and overall it's great to see more improvements on the Proton/Wine front. Moving on to the next news, we're still talking about Valve. And Valve is, a while ago, Valve started working on their own shader compiler for AMD GPU that's called ACO. If you have an AMD GPU, you know how much this matters, because ACO is actually so great. It makes performance on AMD GPUs so much better. And according to Phoronix, on older Southern Island GPUs, the performance benefit goes up to about 9%, which is very impressive. Just for it's not even a driver change, it's just a different shader compiler, and 9% from that's pretty cool. So if you have an older Radeon Southern Island based GPU, so anything like the Radeon HD 7000 series based on GCN 1.0, you'll be happy to know that you can still squeeze that extra bit of performance out of those old cards. And this change comes with Mesa 20.0, but it's still not gonna be enabled by default, particularly for Southern Island cards. First thing you need to do is you need to enable the AMD GPU support for Southern Island cards, and to do that, you need to change your kernel command line arguments. You need to add AMD-GPU.SI_support equals 1 and Radeon.SI_support equals 0 to your kernel command line arguments. I'm pretty sure you can find all the information you need on the Arch Wiki if you're interested. And after that, you also have to set the radv_perftest equals ACO environment variable when you want to launch a game with ACO. And that's even easier. I mean, you just need to change the Steam command line argument, adding again radv_perftest equals ACO space %% to your Steam command line options. Pretty easy and straightforward. It's some extra work, but honestly, judging from the numbers, it's probably worth it. I wish I had an older card I could test this on, because my 5700 XT just destroys anything I throw at it. So I cannot really show much of a performance comparison myself, at least in numbers. But speaking of ACO, one thing that I've noticed by using ACO is that even if the frame rate is pretty much always at 60 locked for most games that I run, using ACO, I'm able to get like more consistent frame rate. Like, you know, when you're playing a game and the frame rate is fine, but sometimes it just kind of freezes for half a second and all that kind of stuff. ACO actually fixed that for most of the games that I run. So there's that. It's pretty impressive what Valve has done here. Anyway, let's move on. Today it's gaming packed, this episode, right? And we're still talking about the game, and this is one I'm pretty excited about. I'm very actually excited about. It's called Ultra Kill. It sounds so cheesy, but This game is just so great. It's an upcoming retro style, extra gory and violent FPS with Linux support that's again coming out. Well, I guess it's coming out soon. So the game is not still not out yet. There's an extensive demo that I've even tried available on itch.io, and let me actually see if I can find the link so I can drop it in the description. Oh well, in the chat. There you go. It's called Ultra Kill Prelude, and it's the demo for Ultra Kill. So for what I've tried, for what I tested, I mean, I've played the entirety of the demo, which is again pretty extensive and it's pretty long. So if the demo is so long, I'm so excited to see how long the game is actually gonna be. So it has a very retro aesthetics to it, and like it has like a weird shader where everything is mostly pixelated, as if you're running like an old game at low resolution on a high-res monitor. But it doesn't actually look bad. It actually looks very good. It's a very refined effect, and this retro aesthetic reminds me a lot of classic Doom, but not quite. I mean, of course it does take some inspiration from Doom or Quake and all those old FPSs out there, but it's obviously a very modern game because it's a lot faster paced compared to older games and with more modern characteristics. And like it has a very fast combat style where the character itself is pretty fast. It's pretty fast already, and there are parkour elements where you can wall jump and you can dash in the air, and there's like secret levels, secret bosses, unique bosses, and an increasing difficulty. And it's just, I mean, you just have to try out the demo. Again, it's available on itch.io. It's just so great. I'm happy to see this kind of game come out in 2020. This is actually what I've been looking for in the gaming industry. Like, get back to the basics. Just a gory. It's just ultra violence. It's the bosses, the level designs and stuff actually reminds me a lot of Dark Souls. Not because of the like the setting, because this is kind of modern post-apocalyptic. But I wouldn't really know how to categorize this. It has an esoteric feel to it, like the whole environment. But in terms of how you progress from one part of the level to the next, it feels a lot like Dark Souls. And even the bosses, the first boss is pretty easy to kill in the first try. The second one is actually quite a lot more difficult. Not too much. I mean, it's a progression, but you have to actually start timing your moves and start actually thinking about what you're doing to defeat the second boss. And it goes all the way up to the final boss, which is actually two guys, two giant monsters you have to kill, and that gets really intense. I've died like something like 15 times before I could beat it, and it was really a great experience. I mean, I love this game already. I can't wait to try it out, to try out like the full game. But anyway, let's move on to the next news. Eliza, the KDE music player, has been submitted to the Windows Store, and it's like the last in the long list of KDE apps that made their way to the Windows Store. And so this isn't anything new per se, but this is the first time I personally talk about this. And I've avoided to talk about it because I didn't know how to feel up to this point. Kinda, it still feels kind of weird, if you know what I mean. Of course, this way the KDE developers can have some financial support to support the work, which is awesome. I mean, one of the biggest problems with open source is actually getting the developers to like a proper compensation for the work. And it's one of those things where the big fish doesn't even have a problem, because something like Red Hat or Canonical, they can just sell support and get away with it, and I mean finance the whole development process. But smaller fishes like singular developers on like in the KDE community, or indie developers that just want to make apps for their favorite platform, they find themselves in kind of a weird spot, because they just want to do what they're doing, otherwise they wouldn't. But it's also difficult to keep up with projects, with personal projects, if you don't have any compensation, because as we all know, time is money. And if you give up your time, give away your time for free, you're basically losing money. And you can do that up to a certain point, but like it's not a sustainable business model, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so I mean, it's great to see more KDE apps making their way to the Windows Store, and apparently this is working out for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it, right? The only real issue I have with this thing is that I fear that they will need to spend more time actually supporting and maintaining the Windows version, which means they'll probably have less time to dedicate to the Linux version, maybe. I don't really know about that. I don't know how much it takes to maintain a Windows version. One thing that I know is that developing on Linux is a whole of a lot easier compared to Windows, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. And if they think that they can get a profit from it and come out with a positive final product, which is more apps and better quality apps that are available for both Windows and Linux. I mean, if it works for them, I mean, it's great. It still feels kind of weird, if you know what I mean. But again, good job, KDE. I'm happy that you're managing to move your projects forward. And let's move on to the last piece of kind of news. It's not really news. It's just more of a heads up about one of my projects. You're already pretty familiar with it, probably. It's called Feeds. It's my RSS feed reader that I've been working on, and I've been struggling for the last weeks trying to find the curl pit of a particular bug that has been driving me nuts, and that's to do with some wrong character formatting when fetching articles. And what happened is, well, I'm pretty sure it happened to you at some point. Some non-ASCII characters get rendered as gibberish characters, and that doesn't really detract from the overall experience, because at the end of the day, the article is still readable, but it detracts from an aesthetic point of view, because you just see these gibberish characters where they shouldn't be, and it just drives me nuts. It's one of those things, you know. And I've been trying to find the curl pit for this problem, and I finally managed to. And I just wanted to give you a heads up if you're maybe a developer and you are having a similar problem. So what I'm doing is I'm fetching an HTML page, and I'm feeding the HTML to another library to basically build a reader mode around it. And I'm using the package requests from it's a Python package. And what happens is it's actually there that the problem happens, and the reason here is that it thinks, since it hasn't had a better suggestion from the web server, I guess, it thinks that the encoding for the web page is actually Latin 1, which is not. most of the time. Most of the time it's actually UTF-8, as you're probably aware. And since there was this encoding mismatch, those gibberish characters started appearing. And to fix this problem, it's actually pretty easy. You have to get your response object from the resource, from the requests.get method call, and do like an assignment result.encoding equals UTF-8 as a string, and then you get result.text, and you get your properly encoded string, or encoded and decoded string with no problem. So just a quick heads up there. Maybe you're having a similar problem. Just encodings, it's 2020 and they're still a problem. We should all be using UTF-8 anyway, but apparently stuff's not yet that universal. Anyway, I think the time's up for this episode. Again, a short one like last week's. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. Starting from next week onward, the TechPills weekly live stream will be on Fridays, same time. So no more Saturdays, Fridays. And again, same time, so that's 5 p.m. CET, 11 a.m. EST, 10 a.m. CST, 8 a.m. PST. So, of course, I will keep you posted with updates when we're about to start the live stream. So if you want to join live, and of course, you're welcome to. Just make sure to join the Telegram group and channel where I post about upcoming videos, upcoming live streams, and all that kind of stuff. You can find the link down here actually, and even a nice useful QR code if that's how you roll. Anyway, guys, that's it for this weekly live stream. Thank you very much for watching. We do appreciate it. If you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there. And also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll be seeing you in the next one.